BRICS, a group comprising the world's strongest economies, has been overlooked in the past. However, today, it has emerged on the global political stage as a formidable force. From introducing its own currency to welcoming new members, the group is now on its way to achieving independence from Western influence. The story of the BRICS began in 2001, when the term was coined by Jim O'Neill as a matter of convenience to describe the emerging powerhouses, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, that were expected to take over the political economy of the 21st century. South Africa became part of BRICS members later in 2010. Consisting of the three major economies of the world, BRICS had not received much coverage. Many people never even heard of it until a few months ago when the group came forward with a newfound force to thwart the position of the dollar as the world's reserve currency. Not to forget, BRICS nations also have ambitions of replacing the G7 on the global stage, and when we look at the statistics, one may think that it is already a better organization than the G. The current BRICS 5 now contribute 31.5% to the global GDP, while the G7 shares have fallen to 30%. By 2030, the BRICS are anticipated to contribute more than 50% of the global GDP, and the proposed enlargement will almost probably accelerate this. The BRICS control 26.7% of the world's surface area, 41.5% of the world's population, and around a quarter of the world's total economic output, making them larger than the USA or the European Union in every way, and they are only getting bigger over time. One of the reasons why BRICS never looked scary to the world was its existence of 14 years without getting much done. When the group was formed, the economies of these countries were doing so well that it seemed that the group would be able to control the political economy in the 21st century, but if we look at the statistics, only China has been able to get the job done. The overall outlook of the BRICS bloc makes it look intimidating, but it is basically all about China. Its output is twice the combined output of all the other countries in this group. Russia's economy has been in decline for more than 10 years, and the war it is waging in Ukraine is also anticipated to have a significant impact on it. South Africa and Brazil are also experiencing economic difficulties. India, the second largest economy in the group, is also performing remarkably well, albeit more slowly. Again, this is undermined by the fact that the two biggest economies of the group can't even get along with each other. Their antagonism and their resentment are not hidden from the rest of the world. This is probably the reason why BRICS has not been given as much weightage. For an organization to move forward, the key is the convergence of the interests of its members. Opponents pointed this out by saying that the countries were too diverse to be grouped together. BRICS's detractors were not overly mystified by this because it seemed the nations were too diverse to be put together. Take China and India's conflicting interests as an illustration. Even the regime types of all countries are different, given Russia and China have authoritarian regimes while the other ones are democratic. The border conflict between China and India and their hegemonic ambitions in the Indian Ocean do not make the group alarming for the West. But the fact that may have been overlooked is that international politics is very unpredictable and that economic cooperation has been one of the biggest tools to group nations together despite their differences. This is not the first time that countries within a group have contradictory opinions. NATO is made up of nations with a variety of interests and political viewpoints. For example, the UK and France had different opinions on military participation in Iraq, but this didn't stop NATO from carrying out its missions. The BRICS countries have promised to trade more aggressively despite all the predictions, and they intend to usher in a new age of collaboration with the announcement of the introduction of their very own BRICS currency. The New Development Bank, NDB, often known as the BRICS Bank, is one of the largest projects to come out of this varied group of nations. The New Development Bank, which aids struggling as well as developing countries to increase their economic production, is structured and operated much more like the IMF. Apart from the BRICS countries, the membership is limited to just 9 nations, including Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Uruguay, and Bangladesh. The countries have even pushed for their own games and tournaments. They even talk about building their own undersea optical fiber connections to connect all the other members. The incentive is clear: BRICS wants everything of its own, banks, currency as well as its own Olympics, whatever it takes to be out of the Western sphere of influence. A wave of de-dollarization is going on, and with the talk of BRICS, new currency, most probably backed by gold, it should ring the alarm bells for the dollar. Saudi Arabia and China are now seeing a somewhat closed relationship, and the Saudi foreign minister recently shocked the world when he announced that Riyadh is open to oil deals in other currencies besides the dollar. Another peculiar turn of events is China brokering deals between Saudi Arabia and Iran, sending a strong message to the USA that the Middle East is now out of its influence. The Russian war on Ukraine and the resulting consequences for Russia in the form of sanctions have caused distress to many countries all around the world. Considering that the US was able to freeze $300 billion of the Russian central bank's foreign exchange reserves, China claims that the US is weaponizing the dollar and abusing its position. It sends a strong incentive to the countries already wary of the US actions. They may be worried that they can be subjected to the same treatment whenever the US feels like it. This is why many of them weren't against the notion when Putin discussed the creation of a new reserve currency. A recent announcement by Argentina to trade in the Chinese yuan instead of dollars is confirming the assumption that states are now looking for dollar alternatives.